My father was too young for the first war and too old for the second, but he did something else. I forgot what it was called. They patrolled the streets during the war. My older brother was in the Marine Corps. My younger brother couldn't serve because of health, but one of his daughters went into the Marine Corps. And I know the Marine Corps is very proud of their birthday, as I saw on Facebook my brother and my niece together at the Marine Corps ball. It kind of irritated me. I called my younger brother. Something that was said earlier was, that we all go to war. Well, that's not true. Many of us do not see war. Some of us do. And so I called my younger brother. I said, it just irritates me seeing them so proud of themselves. Neither one of them have ever been out of country or shot at. You don't see my picture in there. Prior to the destruction of the Second Temple in 70, during the Common Era, there was a conflict in the temple. It was not any different from many churches today. Issues of power, who's in control, that kind of thing. At the time, the chief priest and the Herodians had control of the temple. The people were suspicious of them because they were closely associated with the Romans. Now, the Sadducees insisted that the proper place for Jewish devotion, worship to God, was in the temple like always. Now, each group, each division had scribes, and the scribes' job was to interpret the law, but the scribes were not rabbis, nor were they priests. They were more generally involved with the proclamation of the law for the group they served and were seen as lacking authority. So Jesus is now teaching in the same climate into which he was born, a climate of conflict. Recall the questions coming to Jesus in previous weeks by the scribes, the Pharisees. To whom shall taxes be paid? Questions about marriage and the hereafter. They want to know by whose authority is Jesus healing and teaching. Questions about divorce, questions about the difficulty of the rich entering into the kingdom of God, and on and on. These questions grow out of division, with one group supporting one side, the other the opposing. Does that sound familiar? When he is asked about the greatest commandment, he gives the correct answer according to tradition and Jewish law. But the remarkable thing is this: in the midst of all this conflict and tension, Jesus repeats the commandment to love your neighbor. Well, they all agree this is the right answer, but then they go back to arguing and fighting among themselves, more division. Before long, the scribes, the Pharisees, Sadducees, chief priests, elders, they will join forces to see that Jesus is executed. Now, Luke gives a clearer definition of neighbor, but here in Mark, it is unclear to these leaders. They believe in loving neighbor. They just are not real sure who that neighbor includes. They were trying to find a wedge issue, something to come between Jesus and the people, a distraction from the real issues. The detractors of Jesus were looking for something to pit the people against him, to distract from his teaching. But it gets worse. The Sadducees were lackeys of Rome. They were paid for their services. Pontius Pilate used them as puppets, and they were well paid. So those who could lead the people in revolt, who could stir their passions, were also the very ones who became the voice for Rome. This very dangerous act of thinking that one's nation and God are the same. See, the Hebrew Scriptures supported the idea of God's chosen people, the nation of Israel, but with the advent of Jesus, we each have access to salvation regardless of nation or race. And now Jesus shows their hypocrisy through the offering. What is it that attracts our attention? Isn't it the big gifts, the grand gestures? Don't we just all oogle over a large gift to the church or non-profit? But do we even notice the small gift of the widow? The widow herself is unnoticed. Not only did she have little in the way of means, but she also was like a child. She had no standing in the community, no say whatsoever. Now, to be honest, don't we most often think about what is the least I can do or give to be acceptable? Few of us ever really consider how much we can stretch or increase our giving. Few of us say, I wonder how much more I can do for my neighbor, for others. Well, Jesus is not impressed by the one who comes by and allows his change to click in the offering tray so others can hear. It sounds like a lot. But this widow, this woman who gives only 2 copper coins, has given everything she has. Now, we don't know how she came to get the 2 coins. It could have been from labor. It could have been from begging. Actually, it makes little difference. She has given all she has, trusting in the goodness of God. Well, today we recognize those who have given of themselves for the cause of our democracy. This day, also known as Armistice Day, was established in 1938 as the end of the war to end all wars. It was the signing of the peace treaty on the 11th month of the 11th day at 11 o'clock. President Eisenhower signed an order changing Armistice Day to Veterans Day in 1954. And it was observed in October until 1978 when it was returned to Armistice Day. So Veterans Day is observed on November 11th. We do not come today to worship killing. Armistice Day is the honoring of peace. It is the day peace was supposed to end all wars, but it did not. We do recall the people who went to war on our behalf, who were willing to sacrifice on behalf of their nation. And often when someone says we'd like to do more for veterans, I say you can. Quit having senseless wars. Yes, we remember those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, but in truth, most of us who served have sacrificed as well. I know I gave up over 5 years of, contributing to a retirement fund, over 5 years of not gaining senior status in a company. I gave up making more money and not being present for the birth of my first child. In fact, I was in Thailand at the time and was called to the office for a phone call. It was the Red Cross. At first, I didn't know what was going on. They were congratulating me on the birth of my daughter. It was kind of lonely not being there. Now, there's a tradition that's observed in France and England. Actually, there's different traditions in many parts of the world. In Jerusalem, on the day they remember the horrendous happenings in Nazi Germany, I think it's 2 minutes. There's a sound and everybody knows. Traffic stops. Everything stops. People get out of their cars and stand in silence for 2 minutes. In England and France, on Armistice Day, they have 2 minutes of silence, usually observed at 11 o'clock. Today, let us observe 2 minutes of silence. Does someone have the ability to tell me when 2 minutes is up? I know 2 minutes sounds like a long time. It is not, really. And, pardon me. In the scheme of things, I remember a teacher whose students were always concerned about what time it is so they get out of class. And so she took and made a placard and put it underneath the clock. And it said, "Time will pass, will you?" So let us take 2 minutes in silence to remember. This is something that has always carried me in difficult times. And so here's my prayer. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. For me, be it Christ, hence to live. If Jordan above me shall roll, then no pain shall be mine, for in death as in life, you will whisper your peace to my soul. It is well with 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 my soul.